All right, grown-ups, it's just our time. I love the babies, but to help you, I gotta speak my mind. This segment's here to help you grow with book reviews, lessons, and things you'll be glad to know. If your little one's restless or looking to play, send them to my other playlist. The read-alouds there will brighten their day.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Behind the Book, where honest reviews spark deeper, more meaningful conversations. I'm Erica M. Burrell, the teacher lady, and your fairy godparent when it comes to sharing joyful stories. Now, this week we're talking about grief, which is a super heavy topic. And today's Behind the Book explains how this book, A Puppy's Tale, helps as a resource to be able to do just that. First, go check out the Read Out Loud. It's interactive and it'll help give you perspective or insight when I'm talking about some of the things that I'll unpack today. Because in this episode, I'll be going over the glows or the things that I loved, the grows or the things that I think could have been a little bit better, who I think this book is intended for, and who should have it in their home library. And honestly, whatever else comes to mind, because that's just what it is when it comes to me. But it's all in a segment of Behind the Book where we go past the pages to get to the heart of the story. You ready? Let's go. So in the story, you have the main character of both Evan and Achilles. Evan is a little boy and he's feeling lonely. And then Achilles is a dog that is also feeling lonely. They find each other early and it kind of takes you through their journey all the way up until the point that Evan has to say goodbye because Achilles is passing away from old age. The book very clearly illustrates the beginning to the end. And that's why I thought that it would be a valuable resource when talking about grief or transition of life period with your child. Enjoy the relationship and enjoy the journey. There was something really magical about how Grant wrote out the emotions behind both the dog and him when he was a child, which in the story he goes by Evan. But nevertheless, he very clearly illustrates this idea behind loving hard and how that love continues even after Achilles passed away. Like at the end of the book, he kind of showed Achilles in the clouds. Regardless of a child's or a family's spiritual beliefs, the overall image of the person that has left in the physical being with you can be very comforting for most. And I feel like he illustrated that in a way that didn't push forward one religion or another. And it kind of made it this universal experience. Another one was friendship and just genuinely like loving somebody unconditionally. He showed that time and time again when Achilles was cutting up, like when he was eating the donuts in the kitchen. And I'm going to switch back and forth between Evan and Grant because in the book it's Evan, but the person who wrote the book is Grant. If you hear them both, I'm speaking about both of them. But essentially, as Achilles in this story is doing all of these things like breaking the ball or eating the donuts, it shows that Evan still has this genuine love and care for him, even at his lowest. And there is a lesson of true friendship there. So you got a message on grief, you have a message on friendship, and you have a message on journey. And all of them were done well. In terms of target age groups, he says 4 and up for puppy lovers. And I would have to agree. I think a 4-year-old would definitely get lost in the pictures. And in the story, I think that they might grow tired. The book is a little bit long, but sometimes you can do a nighttime story over 3 days, over 2 days. There's flexibility there. Overall, do I think a 4-year-old would get the message? Absolutely. Between the actual photos, which were really well done, and then the words that accompanied them, you have a child who is neurotypical, who tends to understand general concepts, they will be able to relate and connect with this book. Now, along those same lines, even if your child is neurodivergent, I do feel like the book did a good job, again, of speaking clear enough to where a child would get it. Now, like a lot of books, you and I will look at the book and we'll have 2 different takeaways. And I could see that with this book as well. I could see an older child kind of gravitating to the end of life part of the book. And I could see a younger child just being super excited about a dog being in the book. So I think you can go both ways with this one in terms of age group. Great job, Grant. The first is a child who wants a pet who does not quite understand the responsibility of taking care of the pet. Although the story is based in friendship and their relationship, there was a whole nother kind of lesson plan in my mind because of how he illustrated that friendship and the responsibility of caring for him. So he's going to a soccer game. The dog has to come. He's trying to sleep. The dog is waking him up. The dog needs to be fed. The dog wants to cuddle. And a lot of times we romanticize the idea of having a pet without looking at the reality of what that means. And so if your child is at a stage to where they're like, hey, I really want a dog, I really want a cat, I really want a monkey, I don't really care what it is, I feel like this book is a good resource to honestly consider whether or not they are responsible and able enough to handle that animal. Because one of the things that I thought was really sad was during the pandemic, a lot of people adopted pets. And then when it was time to go back to work, they realized they could not manage and properly care for that pet. And I don't know if you can see him in frame or not, but mine's just like right here sleeping. Every morning at 6 a.m. we go for a walk. During the pandemic, a lot of people adopted pets, and then when they went back to work, they put them right back in the shelter because they realized they could not handle that responsibility. And that happens so often, and it doesn't do what we think it should do in the way in which we think it should do it. We want to give it back. And that is very sad. And so if your child is considering, utilize this book as a resource. It's the first type of family I think could really use this book. The second type of family I think could really use this book is a family that is going through grief. So I lost my son this year. My daughter is having a super hard time. I think everybody is having a hard time. Like, that's a really big deal. And I'm just to the point to where I can say that without bursting into a bunch of tears. It comes and it goes. But when you think about grief, it's not one thing, which is kind of what I was saying at the beginning of the read out loud for this book. And so for, Evan in the story, it is the grief of losing his pet. And for me, it might be my son. But there's also grief in changing schools. There's grief in changing jobs. There's grief in ending relationships. There is so much grief that we experience in our life, and we very rarely have the opportunity to stop and just process what it is that we're experiencing. And so if you're a family that's experiencing grief, and it doesn't much matter what type of grief, I feel like this book is a good conversation starter for people who are experiencing grief from a pet, a person, or even an item, an heirloom that was lost. You will still get the same emotion. Whenever I'm looking at specifically picture books or children books, because a lot of my children are neurodivergent, they're in the process of learning how to read, but they're not fluent readers yet, I need the photos to match the story. Like, the abstract art does not work well, in my opinion, for children. It's super important to be like, straightforward. It's kind of like, I need you to put on your shoes and get your lunch. I can't put on your shoes, get your lunch, turn off the TV, go to movie. Like, we cannot be all over the place. Like, we literally have to say what it is we mean. We got to be clear. And the same is true when it comes to picture books. The pictures need to match the words. Can a child that doesn't read yet get it? Can a young child get it? So that was one of my glows. The second glow is I really appreciate how Grant, or Evan, gave Achilles a voice. And so we know that dogs don't speak in the same way, but they definitely communicate. Like, if it's morning and Teddy sees me, he knows it's time to walk, wrap it up, let's go, get the leash where you at, right? Dogs definitely communicate. And I feel like this story did a great job of giving a voice to a dog that was still in a way that really like humanized a dog, if that makes sense. And that's hard to do in writing. I think Grant did an excellent job writing and kind of breaking down that story. And then the last glow that I would say is at the end of the book, he has a picture of Achilles, and it kind of closes this chapter out perfectly. It's simple, but it really brings home the overall like message of this was my life. Like, this is what I'm experiencing. And it kind of just brings everything together as like this package deal. So that worked for me. Now, there aren't a lot of grows that I have for this book. When I'm looking at a grow, it's what stood out as the thing that I would want to add or change or edit, right? Like, I'm an author, I'm an educator, I'm a reading advocate, I love books. Like, what is it that I'm like, oh? And for Grant, it had nothing to do with the writing. The only critique I would give is that I don't feel like I had a good heads up to what was coming. So I'm reading this book and I'm so excited about the journey of him getting the dog and playing the dog and loving the dog. And then boom, he starts to die. And I'm like, I'm like bawling my eye. Like, I'm sad. I'm really sad. And I go through this whole experience. And so I don't even think he should have changed the words. The words are written well. What I do think should have happened was at the beginning of the book, give a fair heads up on what is about to come, because that gives me the opportunity as a parent to preview my book, which I always recommend. I always recommend parents preview the book before you bring it to a kid, and preview the show before you let them watch it. And if it's a season 2, preview season 2, because they be changing stuff between seasons. You have to. A note for parents, and I would address it that way. A note for parents that explained to us what was coming. It would have helped. It would have helped to not have such a change of emotion, even though that transition was well, because I wasn't expecting it. It threw me off. And so if it threw me off, I can only imagine how a child would respond to it. Now, that said, there is, because I give credit where credit is due, and I do love this book. So in the back of the book, it says, great friendships last a lifetime, but the magical ones last forever. In a quiet yard, in a bustling school, two hearts are searching. One is fluffy, four-legged, the other is quiet, kind. What happens when their paths finally cross, and how do you measure a bond that grows with every wag? Turn the page and discover the loyalty, laughter, and moments that never leave us. Yeah, he didn't do it. I was thinking like, oh, I think he gave us a heads up. He didn't do it. It threw me off. I thought I read something. I didn't. It threw me off. Just one grow. A lot of times I speak animated, so I don't want y'all to misunderstand what I'm saying. It's a good book. Get the book, okay? All right, cool. There is so much to discuss in this book. One of the things that I would discuss is the feeling of losing something or someone, and how do we go about that? Because grief is something inevitably every person will experience. And if you're consistently having those conversations or adding it in as a natural way of your dialogue, right? When it feels natural, when it feels like it makes sense, then it helps the child to be able to have words. And so with all discussions, I recommend that you lead the discussion as a parent. I've noticed that even as an educator, if I start talking, all of a sudden the child takes over and they're able to run with it. Now, my kid don't have that problem. My kid could talk first. She'll be fine. But for a lot of children, they want you to kind of share your insight and be vulnerable in order for them to open up. And so one of the ways that you could start having a discussion about this book is like, wow, I remember when I grieved when we moved to Minnesota. My grandpa got a new job and we had to move states, and that was so hard for me. And honestly, still sometimes, like, I still miss where we used to live. And I was just wondering, like, is there anything that you're grieving right now, or any sadness that you're experiencing? See, the thing about this book is you can go grief and you can go sadness, or you can go joy. Oh my gosh, I remember my best friend from high school. Brittany was that girl. I wonder how she's doing. How are your friendships today? What's going on with you? Is Lisa still kind to you? Do you feel like the friendship kind of reflects how Achilles and Evan were in the book? So it is very easy. You see what I did there? It is very easy to draw the child into conversation and communicate in a way in which they're able to understand. If your child is nonverbal, baby, don't go talking to them and be like, well, the teacher lady sent me. They're nonverbal right now. Can you draw with them? Can you have them use their iPad as a way to communicate their emotions? Connect with your child. Just because they can't speak doesn't mean they don't understand, okay? And then the last discussion that you could have is, how do you think Evan is managing that type of grief? And you would think like, oh my gosh, that's a huge question for a kid. But I'm telling you, when you give kids an opportunity, a platform to let their brains flow or to draw or whatever it is their thing is, they get to running. And so you'll hear answers. And I know because I've tested it with my kids, not just my child, but my students. For those of you who don't know, I oversee a school. I've helped with district. I've been around kids forever. But you'll hear different answers. Well, he keeps his picture was one of the answers that I heard. And he always talks about him, which was another answer that I heard. But the point of these conversations are to start to normalize things that will never fully feel normal. And there are a lot of ways to utilize this book as a resource to be able to do just that. A scientist in me also wanted to talk about the aging element of this book and how we all age. That process is day by day. We're getting older. So again, it's another conversation you can introduce. Really think about, what is it from this book that your child needs to learn or discuss the most? And if you're struggling with how to do that exactly, leave a comment and I'll respond to it. And then we can take it from there. So this week's theme, as you know, is all about grief. And if you need more tools or resources, go check out my Teacher Lady Speaks episode, which airs on Friday, which is kind of like a lesson plan of all the things we've been doing throughout the week. Teacher Lady Speaks is basically a playlist where my goal is to use my experience in teaching tiny humans to help enhance yours. So it gives resources, insights, and honest reflections from a well-seasoned educator, because I understand firsthand how challenging love work is. And finally, as a lifelong reading specialist, I asked you to go check out my Pay It Forward initiative. It is very simple. You buy a book, it gets given to a child that needs it. All is well in the world. Okay. As an author and illustrator, it is so important for me for children to be able to receive my books, for children to be able to receive other books that are done intentionally to help our babies. So thanks for watching and growing with me and being part of this book loving community. I'll see you next time on Behind the Book with the Teacher Lady. Honest reviews spark more meaningful reading. I love that. I love that. Say bye, Teddy Knuckles.